existence. All right, because the week before that, we were at pages, I think 222. All right, regarding the three aspects, 221, and right up until page All right, can you hear me now? Just now there was some problem. The page closed. So now I have refreshed it. So is everything all right now?
Yes, madam.
All right, thank you. So I was mentioning that now we go back to the chapter on the degrees of existence, because the week before last, I was explaining, all right, from about the three aspects of the natural universal, all right, which basically on the nature of quiddity is conceived by the intellect, all right, which started from page 221 until we finished two to eight. All right. Of course, Prof. Al-Attas continued the explanation. All right, but we are not going through his further elaboration. All right, because of course it's important to know, but in relation to just to the chapter that we are doing, it's not really you would say necessary, all right, for us to continue with that chapter because of time limitation. All right, so now we go back to the chapter on the degrees of existence, where we left off on the 20th of August, all right, which is page 272. All right, page 272. As you can see on the screen, all right, after that footnote 299, that was where we stopped. All right, that was where we stopped on the 20th of August, before we went to the earlier chapters, which start out to the earlier pages. We started from page 221 to 228 regarding on the nature of quiddity, in terms of the logical sense and in terms of the ontological sense. All right, meaning if you look at quiddity in both those two aspects, then it becomes the hakikah, or the reality of the thing. Okay, so as far as it's important to continue with the reading of basically this chapter, which was our intention and goal. All right, so we stop at that elaboration on quiddity. Now we continue back to the chapter on the degrees of existence. All right, and we start there. We do not concede, which is after footnote 299. All right, so everybody, we are on the same page. Everybody here?
Yes, inshallah.
All right, good. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so I will read. We do not concede. I prefer to read from my text, all right, because it's kind of small, the font on the screen. But you can follow the text on the screen. We do not concede that the absolute existence, in virtue of its absoluteness, is identical with the natural universal in the above mentioned sense. All right. We have been looking at the term natural universal to understand what Prof meant. All right. So he is saying we do not concede. That means you can say we do not agree that the absolute existence, in virtue of its absoluteness, is identical with the natural universal in the above mentioned sense. Remember, we also talk about the aspect of absoluteness in the three aspects of the quiddity. Remember, page 221, 222. This is because, then he explains, why doesn't he concede? Why doesn't he agree? Because we are not here speaking of existence as a conceptual entity. All right? Remember, in relation to the degrees of existence as it pertains, all right, to existence or being or wujud, here, or in terms of the degrees of existence that he is elaborating here, is in relation to existence at the level of reality. Hakikatul wujud. Not at the level of concept of existence, which is mafhum al-wujud. So he is saying, all right, the term natural universal, which he refers to in terms of the absoluteness, and also which we referred to in the previous class 2 weeks ago, is in relation to the concept of existence. All right, quiddity as it pertains to existence, but at the conceptual level. Okay, so here he says this is because we are not here speaking of existence as a conceptual entity whose characteristics are governed. All right, you can hear me, right? Maybe I should go nearer to my laptop. By mental considerations pertaining to universals. Remember, our discussion before was we were talking about universals, natural universals. All right? But here he says we are not, when we refer to the absolute existence, meaning God at the level of absolute existence, al-wujud al-mutlaq is not the same, because we are not referring to a conceptual entity. Okay, since we are speaking of existence as an objective and active reality independent of the mind. Okay, yeah. What is meant by the absoluteness of absolute existence is that it does not have a determination, ta'ayyun. All right, that's why we went back, all right, to in relation to understanding the concept of absoluteness. But that explanation was at the level of natural universal, which was at the conceptual level. All right, but here we are interested in understanding wujud at the level of reality. Okay, But the concept is the same. Absoluteness in the sense, all right, that it does not have a determination. That means it is not determined. And the term, all right, is ta'ayyun. All right, remember these are all istilahat, all right, meaning terminologies which are important in Islamic metaphysics and philosophy. All right. So what is meant by the absoluteness of the absolute existence, all right, is that it does not have a determination, ta'ayyun, or individuation, which is tashahhus. All right. That is not consistent with the determination or individuation in which it is involved in the guise of essences that occur in the various ontological levels and degrees. All right, because when you talk about determination and individuation, you are referring to in which it is you are referring to essences, right? Because things are determined or are individuated as not in terms of its existence, but as what it is, right? Meaning it is determined as human, all right? It is individuated as a specific human being, all right? That's what he means, okay? And this all occurs at the various ontological levels and degrees. All right, this determination and individuation. This means that it does not have an individuation in accordance with the characteristics of any individual essence that precludes it from simultaneously being also individuated in accordance with the characteristics of other individual essences without any multiplicity or change occurring in its own essence. All right, so simply put, all right, God at the level of absolute existence, all right, Allah at the level of absolute existence, all right, means that it is not individuated or determined. And when you say that, when you say existence, all right, are individuated or determined, you have to refer to the essences, right? But he is saying, all right, but Prof is saying that it is, and when you talk about absolute existence, is beyond that determination and individuation, and therefore here he says that it precludes it. Precludes mean it is outside. You can say outside from the it precludes it from simultaneously being individuated. That means it is not individuated, all right, in accordance with the characteristics of other individual essences without any multiplicity or change in its own essence. To the essence of absolute existence, all right, is one and the same. It does not take, all right, the characteristics of the essences in which it is determined or individuated at the various levels, all right, of at the various ontological levels. All right, so do you understand? If we can refer this to the previous discussion, all right, 2 weeks ago, remember Prof. Al-Attas said man is man. Remember when we were discussing about the definition of man as pertaining to the genus and the difference, but that is at the conceptual level, of quiddity. Here, what Prof is saying, it's the same idea, all right, in terms of absoluteness, but this is at the level of conceptual reality, in the sense that, all right, the absolute existence does not partake in the essence of, in the characteristics of the essences which absolute, later it will be determined, but at this level, it's not determined. All right, and so therefore, it is beyond determination and individuation. All right, so that is the meaning of absoluteness here. All right, absoluteness at the level of absolute existence. Okay, which is one of the degrees of existence. Okay, clear. So such absoluteness, okay, it from simultaneously being also individuated in accordance, okay, or change without any multiplicity or change occurring in its own essence. There's no multiplicity or change in its own essence, meaning in the essence of the absolute existence. Such absoluteness, which is impossible in the case of the natural universal, considered as a mental entity, all right, does not make it impossible for the absolute existence to be individuated in itself in a manner of individuation that is free from the notion of universality, such as its individuation as God, for example. All right. So here he is saying that it is not impossible. If, for example, we were discussing about earlier on in relation to the quiddity, in terms of its absoluteness, all right, it has to, at a certain level, all right, it has to be individuated. But here, Prof is saying it does not make it impossible, all right, for the absolute existence to be individuated in itself. All right, he is individuated in himself in the sense that he is God, right? Absolute, and at the level of absolute existence in a manner of individuation that is free from the notion of universality. Such as its individuation as God, for example. All right, so he is an individual, individuated, all right, individuated in the sense as God. But at the same time, all right, he is free from the notion of universality. Why? Because in relation to universality at the conceptual level, all right, in the sense that all the particulars under the individual, all the particulars or individual under the universal. For example, you would say all the individual cats or particular cats under the universal of cat. I'm just giving an example. All right, so that universal cat partakes, all right, the individuation and the determination of all the cats under it, of all the different various, all right, cats under it. But in terms of the conceptual, at the conceptual entity as a universal. But here he's saying, all right, in relation to absolute existence, all right, it is first, why is it not sharing in that? of what I explained just now in relation to the universal cat and the particular and individual cats. First, it is not a conceptual entity, all right, absolute existence. It is a reality. So that's one main factor. Although the idea itself is the same, that's why we had to explain to you, all right, the meaning of this universal, this natural universal. At the level of concept, you can look at a thing without taking into consideration all the characteristics, the accidents or the properties of the thing. That means mujarrad, absolute abstraction. So here also, in terms of the absolute existence, all right, it's absoluteness in the sense that it's not determined, it is not individuated, all right, but in terms of but we know, all right, within it, at that level of absolute existence, all right, it will manifest itself, all right, at lower degrees, at lower levels or degrees of existence. But this absolute existence, all right, precludes all the other characteristics, all right, of the other cats. I'm sorry, of all the other, or of all, it means wujud that has been stripped of everything. All right, later. All right, I will, if you follow, somebody asked that, does it mean wujud is stripped of everything? Yes, wujud is stripped of everything in terms of it is pure wujud, pure absoluteness. So when you say strip of everything, that is in relation to our discussion when we talk about quiddity, that natural universal, strip of everything. You just talk about that thing itself. So basically it is the same thing. And here, this, when you say something, okay, that means it's beyond absoluteness. Therefore here, what we have, perhaps, you know what, it would be practical, all right, in the sense that useful for us to remember just the conclusion, all right. The conclusion is this: it does not make it impossible for the absolute existence to be individuated in itself in a manner of individuation that is free from the notion of universality. So in the sense that the absolute existence is individuated in itself. If you talk about something which is universal, like I said, the cat, when you talk about cat at the universal level, okay, that universal cat is not an individual cat. But in relation to absolute existence, all right, it is individual. It is individual, or you would say individuated in itself as God. But just, you know, to compare so that we can understand more clearly, that universal cat, all right, which is basically a conceptual entity, because here he is referring to conceptual entity in the sense that cat as a concept. It is not an individual cat, that universal cat, right? It is not. But in relation to absolute existence, all right, which we are discussing at the level of absolute wujud, all right, hakikatul wujud, that universal, that absolute existence, all right, it what you call is free from universality. Free from universality. Why is it free from universality? In the sense that it does not take in all the other determined and individual existences below it. You see, this is very important. Okay, I will talk about its implications later on. This is how the misunderstanding comes about when people think this is pantheism. Therefore, then you are saying God is the cats and the dogs and the trees and everything else in the universe. It's not. He does not, he does not, in a sense, he encompasses, all right, we know that he encompassed by everything, but here he is not, preclude means therefore he does not partake in the existences, in the characteristic of the thing as essences. So he's not a universal like that. When I say a universal cat, that universal cat partakes all right, the particularities of, or the characteristics of all the cats. And a universal cat is not an individual cat. All right, it is a universal, partaking everything of the particular and individual cats. But in relation to absolute existence, all right, he precludes, all right, in the sense that he is free from the notion of universality, in the sense that he is individuated, and as individuated as God. He's an individual. It's not a universal. Because a universal would partake all the essences of all the degrees of existences below it, right? It will be, that's a universal concept. All right, when you say a universal cat will have to take into consideration all the particulars and individual cats. But in relation to absolute existence, all right, it is not universal. It is not a universal of all the essences, all right, at the different degrees of existence. But it is individual. But for that universal cat, that universal, all right, that of ordinary things, or at the conceptual level, okay, it is not individual. Is there an individual universal cat? No. All right, this is, if some of you remember, Plato is not the same as Plato's idea of forms. There's a difference, slight difference, okay? So this is what it's saying, that absolute existence is individuated as God. God. That, all right? I hope it's clear. So therefore, it is not a universal notion. God is not a universal. Okay? There was some question. What was it? It means wujud that has been stripped of everything. No, it is not exactly like that. When you talk about in terms of the quiddity or the natural universal which we were discussing, yes, you can say it is stripped of every all the qualities. But when you say it means wujud that has been stripped of everything, well, it is not stripped of, in a sense, it's correct when you say it has been stripped of everything, in that it doesn't share. All right, it doesn't share in the qualities or the properties or the accidents of everything. It is undetermined, and it is unindividuated. All right, so it means you look at it at its absolute form. So in a way that sentence is right, all right, but the problem is in its wujud that has been stripped of everything. Here, meaning it is still an individual. The absolute existence, in the sense it is absolute, it is not determined and not individuated, it is not universal, but it is an individual. It is, well, I think for the sake of understanding, I wouldn't mind using it is an individual. All right, but here, to be more specific, is individuated as God. But a universal notion, all right, it's not individuated. It takes into consideration of all the particulars under it. Okay, but absolute existence is individuated and it is not universal. Okay, all right. Then there's no cat in the universal catness, absolute wujud. There is God. Yes, in the universal cat, there's no cat in the universal catness, of course. It is not an individual cat, a universal cat. It has all the characteristics, all right? In a sense, it is all the cats, the particular cats is a reflection of that universal cat, right? But in relation to absolute wujud or absolute existence, all right, in the sense of understanding at the level of absolute existence, all right, that absolute existence does not partake in all right, in all the characteristics of all the essences that it manifests in the lower degrees of existence. All right? Okay. So there's no cat in the universal catness. Of course, in the universal cat, yes, there's no cat. Is there an individual universal cat? No. That universal catness is made up of all the particular cats. So, but in absolute wujud, yes, there is an individual God. He is individuated as God. He's not a universal. Okay? Then the next question, just a small clarification. If we say absolute existence, are we referring to the ultimate reality? Yes. Who are we referring to? It's the ultimate reality. We are referring to God. We are referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here, this is why we are trying to what do you call understand, okay, what is this ultimate reality? When you say ultimate reality, what is it? So therefore, that's why there are the degrees of, you would say, that ultimate reality. But okay, what's important here, we are wanting to know, to understand conceptually, all right, but what is real is that it is at the level of reality. Okay, yeah, it is not at the level of conceptual, not at a conceptual reality, but we try to understand it conceptually. What are we studying all this? Trying to conceptualize. But the difference, that's why when we talk about, but there are two levels of speaking about wujud. One is at the conceptual level. so we can understand. That's why, all right, we looked at the conceptual level in terms of the natural universal, the quiddity. But here we are saying all the things is different. When you say absoluteness, meaning that something is stripped of everything, mujarrada, mujarrad, right? It's the same concept, but when you refer to wujud, because this wujud is not at the conceptual level, it's at the level of reality, there is a difference. So if you talk about universality as a conceptual notion, all right, it's not the same, because universality at the level of concept, all right, or notion, that it is a universal. There's no individual. But when you talk about absolute existence, all right, being stripped of everything, all right, but in a sense, all other existence that come from it, all right, or that are manifested, or that are determined, or are individuated from it, it remains still an individual. It still remains an individuated being. Do you understand? So that is the difference. Okay, so yes, ultimate reality. What are we referring to? This absolute existence is ultimate reality. It is the, you would say, uh, absolute reality, and even what do you call that? Even you wouldn't say higher than, or it also is beyond absoluteness. That's ultimate reality. Okay. Okay, what else? Is there a way to access recordings of past sessions? I don't know that one. You have to ask the organizer. All right. So here, Majlis Ta'lim says yes, the recording will be available after all 8 sessions are done. Well, I'm not. I don't think we can finish. All right, and that was not our goal. I mean, we did discuss and think that we tried to finish, but I don't think we can finish, because as you know, okay, it's a very complex and dense subject, and we are doing it in a way of reading, so that's why you can say slower, all right, but I think it is not a futile exercise to read line by line and to understand. All right, so what my point is, we may not finish, but I will have to discuss with the organizer. I don't mind continuing until we finish. All right, even though it's past the semester, but perhaps we may not have it once a week. Depending on my schedule next semester, I may have it once in 2 weeks or once a month. And, I'll see how it goes, because I think that I do feel that I want to continue until at least I finish the chapter. At least I finish the chapter. As you can see, all right, in relation to the book Prolegomena, it is the last chapter in terms of the metaphysics, right? On the intuition of existence, on quiddity. Is it on quiddity and essence? And then this last chapter. All right, but so they will give you the recording, but I wouldn't consider it complete. All right, because I don't think, because we only have one more class, scheduled class. All right, and I don't think we can finish, but we knew sort of that we won't finish, but so it's my intention that we may I will continue the class. It doesn't matter to me how many students there are, all right, because classes like this, people are busy, not everybody is really interested in going so much in depth, all right, in this area, all right, in this area of knowledge. So as long as perhaps 10 like that, all right, if it's not below 10, 10 and above, I will consider continuing at least until we finish this chapter. All right, so that is my plan, but I have yet to discuss, all right, with the this Majlis Ta'lim An-Nur. Okay, so then is it the same as wujud al-basit, only that it is individuated? Al-wujud al-munbasit, all right, the self unfolding being. No, it is not. That is another level, only that it is individuated. No, it is not al-wujud al-munbasit, that self unfolding being. All right, it is not. It is still absolute existence. All right, in the sense that it is not a universal, it is individuated. I would think that you can hold on to that. This absolute existence, it is absolute, it is not determined, it is not individuated. All right, but in terms of when you talk about wujud, it's the only wujud, it's the absolute wujud, right? So therefore, everything that exists, all right, has, you would say, a similarity, all right, quote unquote, similarity with wujud. But here, it does not have any similarity. Why? Because it is individuated in itself. It is not universal. Okay? All right. Khalid Bashir, I don't mind having more sessions until we can finish, inshallah. Yes, my intention, and I have offered, all right, because I think it's good that we finish, all right, but I won't have it once a week because in October we already start semester. I'll be very busy with my normal classes and all other activities. Perhaps I will have once in 2 weeks. I'll see how my schedule is, all right, or once a month, all right. And basically, those who are interested, all right, we can continue. You know, we can continue and with this, and perhaps I don't. We'll have to see whether it's online or physical. But if there are those who are not in Malaysia, I think I have, you know, some of you have mentioned you're from Philippines, but maybe you all are in Malaysia, but you're Filipinos, or I don't know. So we can sort that out. The next, the last class is next week, which is organized by Majlis Ta'lim An-Nur officially for this session, all right? But we are not going to finish. I think we are not going to finish this chapter, all right? Well, we can read without understanding, and then we will finish, all right? But so, inshallah, we'll think of another arrangement, not once a week, all right? So yes, Khalid Bashir, I don't mind having more sessions until we can finish, inshallah. All right, so those are the questions. Okay, so now you understand, all right? So, I have, you know, gone through at length to explain to you what is meant by this absoluteness. Because when you say something is absolute, that means that thing which is absolute will encompass everything under it, right? All the individuals and the determinations of things under it. But okay, here, if you go to page 273, the top line, yeah, what is meant by the absoluteness of absolute existence is that it does not have a determination. or individuation that is not consistent with the determinations or individuation in which it is involved in the guise of essences that occur in the various ontological levels and degrees. All right, because in the sense that it will be involved, all right, here that is not consistent. It does not have a determination that is not consistent. Basically, that it partakes or it shares in all right, the individuations and the determinations, all right, that occur in the various ontological levels, meaning at the lower levels. Because when you say something is absolute, that means you are saying that it encompasses everything. But here it is saying, all right, that God at the level of absolute existence, all right, does not, all right, does not partake in all those things, all right, involved in the guise of essences, all right, that occur in the various, does not. In the sense, like I said, to give you the, make it clearer, I gave the analogy of the cat. So in a sense, you cannot say God is, in a sense, everything that exists put together. Simple. It is not. Why? Because it is not a universal, like that universal definition of a concept, meaning that it partakes all the particulars and individuals of everything that comes under it. No. God is not a universal. Why? He is an individual in himself. That universal catness, that universal cat is not an individual in itself. All right, it is conceptual. There is no universal cat. In reality, here we are talking about in reality. All right, so to continue with that, what is the implication of this? All right, this, you can use this argument, all right, in relation to people who say, basically, all right, to put things simplistically, when you talk about the definition of pantheism, and they say all is God and God, all is God, meaning the world is God and God is the world. No, that's pantheism. But here, not all is God, because he's not a universal at the conceptual level, in the sense that if you talk about the universe, even in relation to at the level of concept, it's not the same. Or even if you talk about the reality of God, because here we are talking about the reality of God. All right, and the reality of God, he is individuated. So when you talk about in relation to pantheism, where is that individual God? That God as individuated? There's none. If not, then there won't be any problem, right, for giving the empirical evidence of God, because there is an individual God which you can point to at the level of reality. But even if we talk about God at the level of conceptual, meaning that he is a universal, because an absolute, all right, would be, all right, partaking, all right, you would say sharing, all the things that is made up of the universe, all right, then it's just a universal. And everything in the universe, all right, he is made of everything in the universe. But here he's not. Why? Because he is also above the level of the universe, in the sense that if you say the universe is absolute, all right, because in the sense that, all right, he is, let's say if you say he is absolute existence, then therefore, if like pantheism, then therefore he is the universe. I mean, all that he is made up of everything in the universe. But he is not, all right, here in Islamic, from the Islamic perspective, Islamic metaphysical perspective, he's not. Why? Because he's also beyond absoluteness, which we have discussed earlier. Beyond absoluteness. Here, even at the level of absolute existence, okay, where he is not individuated and particularized, you cannot say that he encompasses all the existence, all right, in terms of reflecting or sharing the individuations and the determinations of all the things or the essences that exist at the various ontological level. He's not. Because why? He is an individuated being. The absolute existence is an individuated being. And you call him God. All right? So, if people were to tell you, oh, all these things, you know, isn't it like pantheism? No. And you have to explain to them why. Or because even Muslims, right? You hear Muslims also against this concept of well, the early expositors never used the term wahdatul wujud, the oneness of being, right? But what is the term really means is tawheed, the oneness of God. All right, the unity of being, the oneness of being, existence, or the wujud. It is not wrong at the same time to say wahdatul wujud, in the sense of it being when you say a concept of wahdatul wujud, because that term came about from the commentators of Ibn Arabi. I'm not sure which specific commentator started using the term wahdatul wujud. Kashani. I better not mention the name because I'm not very sure, but he was trying to explain, all right? He was trying to explain what Sheikhul Akbar meant by this doctrine. But basically, this is the doctrine. When you say about when you say the degrees of existence, meaning levels of existence. So are you saying then, when you talk about at this level of absolute existence, that this absolute existence, all right, includes everything? In a way, you are saying, yes, it encompasses all being. Why? Because it is the only one absolute being. Right? Therefore, everything else that exists must come from the absolute being. From where else? Cannot be non-being or anything else. All right, religiously we would say that's shirk. It's nothing wrong, but it is not the same as other concepts of you would say other metaphysical or other cosmological concepts. For example, like pantheism or panentheism or whatever, all right, it's not the same. And because as we can see, it is not simplistic. We do say Allah, God as simple, as basit, right? Simple, meaning that he is not composite, murakkab. But we are not saying it is simplistic. All these nuances we have to know. So, all right, so it is not wrong to say to use the term, all right, to use the term wahdatul wujud. It's not wrong, all right, to explain the doctrine. But we must understand, all right, in the sense, then therefore, all right, how it differs with other theories or or other beliefs in terms of oneness, or you would say monotheism. All right, so that is what I'm trying to say, the implication, as you can see, okay, of understanding the concepts. Because when you say about absoluteness, doesn't absoluteness include all other things? That's why you say that it has the quality of absoluteness. All right, so I think I've explained that. Okay, so then we continue. Okay, for example, now, all right, then now the absolute existence. Okay, so I think that's as far as it's important to explain in relation to implication of understanding this absolute existence. There are other arguments and proofs to show the differences in terms of it is not pantheism. It is not. This is not pantheism. All right, but at this level is enough to explain to you. All right. So now we continue. So now the absolute existence in its exterior aspect is in turn the interior aspect of the stage of ontological evolvement that immediately follows, namely that of a general determination, ta'ayun jami, sometimes also called general existence, wujud am, containing within itself all the active, necessary, and divine manifestations, as well as all the passive, contingent, and creaturely manifestations. This stage of ontological evolvement, meaning evolve, right? I mentioned earlier, the term evolution is loaded nowadays. Why? Because of the theory of evolution by Darwin, which we don't believe and subscribe. Even at this stage, we already, when we study this, how does theory of evolution, Darwin's theory of evolution in terms of the species, all right, the evolution of the species or natural selection takes place from the Islamic metaphysical view here. We can already at this level, we haven't completed, but I think we can already debunk the theory of evolution. All right, Darwin's theory of evolution. So anyway, so here Prof used the word evolvement Although some authors will use evolution, but like I say, it's problematic, the word evolution now, because of that theory of evolution of Darwin, but actually evolution and evolvement meaning evolve. All right, the process of, you would say, manifestation. Okay, so this stage of ontological evolvement is effected by means of the most holy effusion of existence, Al-Faid Al-Attas. So what is the process? Process of most holy effusion. Al-Faid, remember, well, usually they translate as emanation, or you can say evolvement, you can say manifestation, faid, all right, emanation, or what's the other term? Okay, which is a single expansion of existence in a general manner, containing within itself manifestation of pairs, of opposites, of all possible existence in the invisible as well as the visible worlds, such as the active, necessary, and divine manifestations, as well as the passive, contingent, and creaturely manifestations. All right, this is the second degree of existence, and it is the first of all the manifestations of the reality of existence, so that it is called the stage of the first determination of existence, ta'ayyun awal. We may schematize the foregoing explanation with the following diagram. Okay, so let's go. All right, now, okay, Najiha, you can go further up again. Now, the absolute existence in its exterior aspect is in turn, all right, now, because remember, the absolute existence has both the exterior and the interior. Exterior zahir and the interior batin. All right, is in turn, so now the absolute existence in its exterior aspect is in turn the interior aspect. All right, so the absolute existence, there's the interior aspect, then there's also the exterior. So the exterior aspect of the absolute existence, all right, has become, now you can view it as the interior aspect of this stage of ontological evolvement, all right, that immediately follows. So interior, exterior, exterior, interior, interior, exterior, all right. So there are two, you would say, aspects or two faces. So if the exterior of the absolute existence becomes the interior of this, which is namely, all right, general determination, ta'ayyun jami', sometimes also called general existence, wujud am, containing within itself all the active, necessary, and divine manifestations. So within this interior aspect, all right, or within the exterior aspect of the absolute existence, in the sense that it is absolute, but it's still, all right, in a sense, not yet determined, right? Because it says earlier on, does not have a determination, that absolute. But, all right, that then it becomes the interior, and this interior, which is the general determination or the general existence, what does it contain in itself? Active, all active, necessary, divine manifestations is within itself. as well as all the passive, contingent, and creaturely. So 2 levels: active, necessary, divine. Second, passive, contingent, and creaturely. Okay, so it has both divine and creaturely manifestation. As all, okay, this stage of ontological evolvement is effected by means of the most holy effusion of existence. So how does this take place? All right, is through this Al-Faid Al-Attas. All right, here Prof used the word effusion, not emanation. All right, here, like I said, sometimes terms when used, usually it's translated as emanation, faid. All right, but perhaps, you know, the word emanation again here, you know, has the connotation in terms of referring to the Platonic, Neoplatonic, all right, Plotinus metaphysics of emanation. So, but effusion, but in terms of, if you don't look at the nuance, all right, but the word emanation is also acceptable, all right, as a translation of faid. Okay, here Prof says most holy effusion, you know, fusion meaning emanation, radiation. All right, you would say generation. This word, all right, just you know, to inform you why this term is also in relation to when you talk about, especially in relation to in philosophy also, but in Sufism, it is also as a symbol of Allah Ta'ala's generosity, plenitude, abundance. When you say effusion, radiance, all right, radiation, all these terms to show, you know, as in light, effused or emanated from the source of all light, which is the sun. All right. Okay. So, which is a single expansion of existence. So, where existence in a way is expand, there is an expansion in Shira. All right. Single in a general manner. But this, remember, it is wujud am. So it's still general. It hasn't become individuated yet. Containing within itself manifestations of pairs of opposites. Not yet individuals, but pairs of opposites. Like light, dark, black, white, or big, small, opposites. All right, pairs of opposites of all possible existence. So it's still general. Okay, all possible existence, all the possibilities, the infinite possibilities of existence, all right, in the universe, in both invisible, in the invisible and the visible realm, is, you would say, is contained at this level of existence. All right. Okay. In the invisible as well as the visible world, such as the active, necessary, and divine manifestations, as well as passive, contingent, and creaturely manifestations. All right. So they're already in, not yet manifest, but and divine manifestations in a sense. All right. Here, let's see. All right. It is not. It hasn't taken external manifestation in the sense that it is still at this level, which is the interior aspect. Okay, what is it? So this is the second degree of existence. Second degree. Just now, earlier on, first. And it is the first of all the manifestation. Second degree, but first in terms of manifestation of the reality of existence, so that it is called the stage of the first determination of existence, ta'ayyun awal. We may schematize the foregoing explanation with the following diagram. Okay, there's already manifestation. At the level of absolute, not yet, not yet. This one is, you would say, inner. Is it right to say yes? Yes, because it is the batin, the inner. Remember the two aspects. Okay, let's just look at this diagram here. The essence of the ultimate reality, which is existence. Okay, so just now, Brother Khalid, I think, or I can't remember who asked, are we talking about the ultimate reality? Of course, we are. But when we talk about ultimate reality, we have to take into consideration the degrees of existence of the ultimate reality. Because what is ultimate reality is not just in a sense, all right? Yes, it is God. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this ultimate reality, whose essence is existence. What's the essence of this ultimate reality? Existence. Not at the level of concept, at the level of the reality of existence. We can understand, all right, the reality of the level, the level of the reality of existence through conceptual reality, but it is still not the reality. It's not hakikat. So therefore, I mentioned earlier, the conceptual level of existence, all right, the conceptual level of existence includes absolute existence. But we only know in terms of concepts. We only know, all right, in terms of, you would say, rational knowledge, logical knowledge, or you would say mental knowledge. We understand the concept. What are we doing now? Trying to understand the reality from concepts, but we don't, that we can understand through logic, istidlal, ratiocination and all that. But the reality, that can only be experienced. All this is concept we don't experience. That experience of ultimate reality. You experience, all right, you know about a bottle, all right, through its concepts, and in a sense, all right, you know it being physically present. All right, you know. But here, when you talk about ultimate reality, so according to the urafa, or you would say the hukama, all right, those who really have knowledge, all right, they are saying, and this is basically on their own experience. They have experienced wujud, the reality of wujud. You cannot deny that I wouldn't think, they will say, oh, there are some studies, modern people say, or maybe they are under the influence of drugs, or, they are at a high, what do you call that, state of consciousness is infused, meaning coming from the outside, like they say perhaps they're under the influence of some kind of drugs, all right, which increase their level of consciousness, or you would say, or is awareness or something like that. Wrong. It's not. It cannot come from the outside. If it comes from the outside, all right, it has to be from the source of all existence, who is God. It cannot come from drugs or some other things that which you infuse in you. So what do these scholars do? After they have experienced it, then, especially the philosophers, they try to write their experience rationally, logically. That's why they came up with this whole framework of metaphysics. Because, all right, their intellect, or if you say now mind, but I would prefer intellect, all right, because their intellect has been illuminated. And that illumination come from experience. Them experience the reality of wujud. Then you will say, how come I don't experience? Or you say, is that possible? Or perhaps you will ask, of course it is possible, because the only reality is wujud. So it is not possible that if you say the only reality or wujud is one, it's not possible, then you cannot experience. You can, but there is, of course, conditions of or criteria of experiencing it. So right now we are all veiled, all right, by concepts, and we just allow our mental faculties or to operate. All right, those who have experience, they have unveiled. That's why ilmu mukashafa, unveiling, right? Or they say tasting, thou, taste. They didn't say you use your mind. All right, witnessing, mushahada, you witness it, not you study it or you cognize it. All right, or this kind of knowledge, all right, as a term is knowledge by presence, or you would say al-im al-huduri, presential knowledge. Why? You're present. Your whole being is present, not just your mind. Right now, it's our mind working and understanding concepts and definitions, the characteristics and the descriptions. That's why, all right, a lot of, the wise people, like for example, Socrates, he says, the more you know you don't know. In the sense, okay, I know all, I mean, all of us trying to understand all this, but yet, all right, how many of us have experienced it? Okay, some of these philosophers, all right, they have written and said they have experience of, they have tasted certainty, whatever words they use. Imam Al-Ghazali, Mullah Sadra, and many others. All right, the fact that they speak about it, they have experienced it. What they do is they translate their experience into rational language, into logical language, so that we can know. All right, and therefore you say, oh, how come there are differences? It depends on what aspect they emphasize or how they explain their experiences. Sufis would experience it using symbolism. Philosophers would give a whole using those what do you call, those logical arguments. All right, they explain discursively to prove what they want to demonstrate, what they say, that about these degrees of existence, that existence has these different degrees. All right, they prove it. That's philosophers. All right, sometimes they are successful, sometimes they are not. All right, the word just now I was saying, they use it syllogism, the philosophers using syllogisms. All right, the Sufis may use, like I said, using mithal or symbols, all right, to express the same thing. Or you would say there are sometimes different aspects that they emphasize, okay, or they view, all right, view things from different aspects, or there's also specific terminologies. Kalam uses different terminology, philosophers use different terminology, the mutakalimun, Sufis use different terminology. All right. So here, what my point is, when you talk about the essence of the ultimate reality, is existence. So existence is just not to be conceptualized. It is to be realized, meaning it is to be experienced. Basically, if you say, what is the ultimate goal of Islamic metaphysics, from my point of view, or I would, from my understanding, would be, is to experience wujud. That would be the ultimate goal. Not to say all of us will achieve this in this world. Of course, we want to achieve it in this world. In the next world, yes, all of us will experience. Right now, the world has become a hijab, including conceptual knowledge. All right, so that would be our ultimate goal of metaphysics. All right, but even if we don't arrive at that level, we can understand. All right, and here, as you go along studying, all right, you sometimes, all right, sparks of the presence of the reality of wujud do come. All right, sparks that you don't get the whole complete picture as this this urafa, all right, because you get the whole picture, and they are also able to write about it, to explain about it, and to prove it. So there is all right, so there, let's look at, there is a question here. So there is an objective reality. Yes, of course. But the Urafa and Hukama experiences and interpretations are different and subjective. Not totally different, not totally subjective. And these unveilings are rationalized in their writings. Yes, I would explain it that way. There is an objective reality in the sense, but subjective in the sense, all right, it depends on who is viewing it. Remember, I can't remember whether we have gone through this, all right, because there is also the preparedness of the subject, or there is a subject, the fact that it's a subject, there is a nature. That subject has a nature, and therefore that plays a role in terms of the unveilings and the rationalization. All right, I would qualify it. But yes, you're right. There is an objective reality. We are not just living in subjective realm, which is what postmodernism is. What do they say? It's subjective. There's no objective reality. If there's no objective reality, that's why they say there's no truth. Because who is to verify? Because there's no truth, because there's nothing which is real to attach. There's no truth that the truth there's no reality which the truth is attached to. That's why they say your truth is as good as mine. There's no absolute truth. All right. What postmodernism is the rejection. Why? Because they say there's no objective reality. So how I view reality, it depends on the subject. But in Islamic metaphysics, there is objective and subjective, and there is that correspondence or identity of the subject and the object. So that is what you call real knowledge or true knowledge. But, all right, Brother Khalid here asks, is it different and subjective? Yes, in a sense it's subjective, because Ibn Sina, perhaps, all right, his vision of reality, you would say, more inclined to his nature as a philosopher, all right? But Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, all right, his would be more as his nature, all right, as a Sufi, or, at, um not feeling. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Doctor.
Yeah, because sorry, but I didn't reply. I was busy reconnecting. It says that fatal error. I don't know what happened, and says that you will the program will stop. Something to do with the Acrobat reader or something like that. So I don't know what. So anyway, I reconnected. So anyway, so now uh where did we leave off just now in relation to when he said, is there objective reality? Of course, there's objective reality. All right. God is Al-Haq. In a way, he's the most objective reality. Or and he's the only reality. So in the sense of subjective, you say their experience, there why there are slight differences, but if you look at the whole framework, is the same. All right, but so in terms of the reception of the truth, all right, reception of the truth also depends on the subject. Okay, so I would say that subjective, in a sense, that's why you see there are differences, all right, slight differences from the perspective. It is the same, the perspective, all right, or perhaps you would say slight differences, nuances, different emphasis, different focus, different terminologies, all right, but they are referring, if to use a more metaphorical sense, all right, to explain, they are looking at the same same peak of the mountain, all right, or if, for example, the postmodernists would say there's no peak, or in the sense whatever peak there is from your own subjective viewpoint, is your own. There's no something which is objective. But from Islamic perspective, all right, there is the objective, there is the peak, there is the peak. Okay, so why are there differences? Perhaps would be from which angle they're looking at the peak. All right, and also I would think in terms of each subject. Okay, but what's the different? But in terms of they have experienced it, in the sense you would say they are not just at the foothills of the peak, but in a sense they have climbed the peak. They have climbed the peak, and so they have climbed the peak and arrived. All right, for them to explain logically or rationally or in whatever method. Okay, so but still each individual journey is still theirs, their own. But in terms of the arrival at the peak, well, it's the same peak, it's not different. All right, so therefore that's why we can still say there is an Islamic metaphysics. And so that's the highest level that we can go, right? The experience. But of course, we must always be, you would say, aware or cognizant or humble enough to know that only the absolute knows the absolute absolutely. To a certain extent, I mean, to the extent of human possibility, yes, those who have experience. But we must also recognize, acknowledge only the absolute knows the absolute absolutely. Referring to only an entity who is above that peak can see the whole thing. Right? Can see the whole peak and the whole mountain. Okay? So when your question about the ultimate reality, here, the essence of the ultimate reality which is existence. All right. So basically, this is the whole subject. All right. But what do you mean by but? Then that means it's unknowable. But remember, way back in the beginning of the class, Allah loves to be known. If not, he will be then that hidden. He will be that hidden treasure. All right. Remember that Hadith Qudsi. All right. He said that I am a hidden treasure and I love to be known. So I created creation so that I may be known. All right. So, and this is the whole here, the process. So so we are studying about the ultimate reality. All right. So in so far as he manifests himself to us and in so far as he wants to be known. Okay. And so then if you look interior aspect, exterior aspect, all right? There's always the interior and the exterior. So then absolute oneness, all right, here, al-ama, absolute oneness. Or in the sense of here, the absolute oneness as you can say, not known by the human mind, not the possibility of knowing if it's not there. It's like the cloud, the Kans Mahfi, right? Then the exterior aspect, all right, which is the absolute existence. The exterior aspect, all right, of that absolute oneness. Actually, that absolute oneness is in the sense, if you want to explain, as above absoluteness. Is even beyond, like Prof Al-Attas say, beyond the categorization or beyond the classification of absoluteness, even because it's beyond absoluteness. Because we cannot understand what is beyond absoluteness. We can understand what is absoluteness, right? Mentally, as something, if you rationally, as something which encompasses everything. But absolute oneness, basically, that's the beyond absoluteness, right? So that's the al-ama or the Kans Mahfi. Okay. Then that exterior aspect which we were talking about, the absolute existence, that's the exterior aspect. So that makes up the first degree. So the first degree is, remember, non-conditioned, non-manifested. Non-conditioned. It's not conditioned by anything. Like you say, strip of everything just now. Non-conditioned. But there is wujud, of course. You cannot strip it of everything else because it is wujud, because the essence of God or of the ultimate reality is wujud, but it is stripped of everything else. All right? And in relation to quiddity, at the conceptual level, it is the natural universal, right? So anyway, then non-condition, non-manifestation. Then that exterior aspect, all right, becomes, or you can say turns to, all right, using Prof's words, he says, is the interior aspect. All right, and here, no, he says abstract oneness Kans Mahfi. Absolute oneness is al-ama. All right, but it's, I don't know, we can check. I thought it was the same thing if you look at, but anyway, you know, that is not something which is in the sense that when you say oneness, abstract and absolute, okay, is the same, kans mahfi. Basically, this is the first degree, yes. So I'm not wrong. The term is, he is just using, all right, now. Well, I will explain. It's not that at that first degree is al-ama. First degree is al-ama and kans mahfi. That's the first degree. And he's just using synonymous expressions in terms of absolute oneness and abstract oneness. All right, that is the first degree. And here, this absolute existence, all right, which is the exterior aspect. The interior aspect is the total al-butud. Is it? That's the term, if I'm not mistaken. All right, he used the hiddenness, I think. The complete hiddenness. All right. And then slowly coming out, all right, exterior aspect. But that exterior aspect, all right, is the interior. Becomes the interior, and the interior becomes the exterior. And this non-condition, non-manifestation, all right, which is no determination, la ta'ayyun, no individuation, which is no tashahhus. All right, and basically this whole process is the most holy effusion, which is al-faid al-aqdas. Okay, so let me see. Yes, this is just the first degree. The first degree. Okay, so what we were saying just now when Prof was explaining, okay, about the necessary divine manifestation, the active necessary divine, the passive contingent, this is at the general existence. Remember, all right, it is still not at the level of external manifestation. In a sense, all right, here, it is within the interior of the absolute existence. Okay, it's within, but it has not manifested, or it is still not at the level of determination or individuation. It's still at general. It's still in terms of manifestations of pairs of opposites of all possible existence. Not individuation, not an individual star, an individual moon. All right? And this whole process of this evolvement, is the al-faid al-aqdas, the most holy effusion, where wujud, all right, radiate itself or emanate itself. You see, because wujud is existence. It cannot not exist because that's its existence. And therefore, there's no such thing as non-existence really. In the sense that if you say this whole universe is existence, all right, because that's the reality of wujud, the essence of ultimate reality is wujud, and wujud is to exist. That's why non-existence is the absence of wujud. But as an entity, is there such a thing as a non-existent thing? And for the philosophers, at least as far as I know, all right, it still exists, but at the level of mental existence. If you say, for example, a unicorn. Okay, that one we go, well, that, you know, that's another discussion. Okay, so let's just finish this diagram here. So that's what it means. Okay, so this is the process of evolvement. All right, the process is called the most wholly effusion, in the sense that God being absolute existence, all right, and his essence is existence, all right, then therefore you can say it has to emanate that existence. That's why the philosophers say God as necessary existence, because, all right, for him to exist is necessary because he exists. That's what it means by necessary existence, which a lot of people misunderstand. Because some, like you said just now, what is in relation to the difference? If, for example, the philosophers emphasize, all right, this is to answer the question just now about the different, inverted commas, in terms of the explanation. If Ibn Sina, who's a philosopher, would say that God is necessary existence, necessary being. Why? Because he cannot not exist. His existence is necessary because his essence is existence. So, the mutakalimun, for example, in relation to the polemic or the debate, all right, in relation to, whether the world is eternal and all those things, all right, in the tahafut, for example, the mutakalimun, they are emphasize will. Then you are saying God has no will because you say that he cannot not exist. I mean, sorry. They are emphasizing the will in relation to the universe. All right, the argument of the eternity of the universe. So the mutakalimun is emphasizing will. God can will something to exist or not to exist, right? But the philosophers, they do not deny God's will or God's irada. It's just that they emphasize God's necessity in the sense of the necessary being. Therefore, if in the sense that God exists, therefore existence emanates from him. And therefore, the universe emanates from necessary being. Because of that quality of necessity, wujud. That's why Ibn Sina calls wajibul wujud. And us, we are just contingent. Mumkin al-wujud. God can bestow existence. We can or we can not exist. There's equal possibility. But the fact that we exist, all right, is because God gave us existence. What is that term? All right, that we turn towards existence. But existence, God, he necessarily exists because that's his essence, the essence of the ultimate reality, which is existence. So therefore, in relation to the universe, okay, just to explain to you from the question, all right, that I think Brother Khalid asked, all right, in terms of, are you saying why are there different aspects or different or subjective in this? That is the reason. Okay, so if the mutakalimun emphasize God's will, you cannot say that the universe is not eternal. The universe is eternal because he says there's a God's will. And God's will is that he wills something to happen. He wills that the universe exists, and he wills the universe exists at a certain point in time. But the philosophers focusing on God's necessity here, the necessity in terms of the reality of the necessary being, all right, or the quiddity or the essence, basically, the reality or the essence of the ultimate reality is that is existence. And therefore, everything else which emanates from this source of existence is existence. And therefore, the universe must necessarily exist. That's all. All right, in terms of argument. But of course, the philosophers do admit themselves, all right, from in terms of the Quran, all right, or that when they talk about eternity of the universe, all right, they do not negate Allah's will. And in terms of their understanding of whether the universe is old or new, qadim, old, and hadith, all right, or as new, is from that perspective of necessity. But the mutakalimun, from the perspective of will. Allah can will whatever, he wants. He desire, he wish. Yes. Okay. So that is to just give you an example of what the question, is it different in terms of logical, all right, or explanation of things, and subjective in the sense of the subject having their own nature. But there is objective reality. And when you talk about it, what is Islamic metaphysics here, all right, it is here we are talking about trying to know and to understand what is objective reality. What is out there. And here we will see what really is out there is only one. Okay, in the sense of, I have to be careful here, all right? Because, if it's going to be recorded and somebody listens out of context, they just come for a few minutes to the class, I'm going to get into trouble, all right? But, we are not afraid of the truth. In the sense here, all right, that is whoever's problem is, if they misunderstand what we are saying. As you can see, we've gone through weeks of explanations, trying very hard to make sure we are as precise as we possibly can to reflect objective reality. Like I say, only the absolute knows the absolute. Absolutely. We will have our gaps in understanding. We will have our limitations. And also that subjectivity in the sense, here is me trying to explain. Somebody else, in terms of their nature, would be explaining things perhaps more completely, more comprehensively. But what we're trying to do is trying to explain as precisely as what we read in the text. All right. So, okay, that is my how I would try to contextualize. So here, let's go in the language of metaphor. All right. So sometimes that's why even Prof Al-Attas, look at how he is so precise and so deliberate. All right, in his explanation at the level of concepts, because that rational, there is the limitation, right? But then he uses metaphor, majas. See, and then now here he says, in the language of metaphor, we say that when the ultimate reality desired to behold his resplendent beauty. All right, so this is the language of metaphor. Instead of using all the al-wujud, al-mutlaq, and all those terms which we were referring to, all right, so let's look at the language of metaphor. He says when the ultimate reality, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, desired to behold his resplendent beauty, Jamal. He revealed himself to himself in his essence. All right, that is the tajalli dhati. Because you say at the interior aspect, right? It's still within himself. It has not manifested as individual things or as different genus or things. Or all right. So here he is saying he revealed himself to himself in his essence. There is tajalli dhati, and beheld therein as in a miraculous mirror. Mirror. All right. This is a very important metaphor in, you know, in Sufism. Even the philosophers use it. All right. Mirror, as in a miraculous mirror. His essential perfections, kamalat dhatiyah, in their eternal and everlasting beauty, and beheld therein as in a miraculous mirror his essential perfections. All right. He revealed himself to himself. It's like a mirror. You see, you stand in front of a mirror, right? You stand in front of a mirror and you see yourself. All right, that is basically it. His essential perfections in their eternal and everlasting beauty. But all right, he is not just a physical presence like us. All right, it's a physical presence when we see that mirror. But in relation to the ultimate reality here, he sees the eternal and everlasting beauty in his reflection, all right, of himself in the mirror. All right. So this is the metaphorical language of what he has explained earlier. This first mirror by which he gazed at himself in contemplation reflects his most beautiful names, Al-Asma Al-Husna, and sublime attributes, As-Sifat Al-Ulya. This first self-revelation and self-contemplation of the ultimate reality refers to the first and second degrees of the absolute existence, the second of which is the ontological level of the first determination. All right. So I think we have to end there. You know, people have, what do you call, left. You see, that's why I'm afraid then they come back and, you know, missed out some gaps, some things. All right. But I hope, inshallah, those who attend this class, you know, at least they will not making misinterpretations. All right. And if you don't understand, please ask. All right. Like just now they asked if there are some, you know, you missed out on certain things, please ask. All right. Don't go out of this class and say this is totally heretic or zindik or kufur. All right. Don't. Be fair. All right. We are reading a text. So anyway, so that the metaphorical level, because you say, oh, nonsense, all this mirror. What? God can look at himself in the mirror. I mean, I am saying this from experience, speaking from experience in the sense that, well, I do watch, you know, all these things on social media. All right. So far, they have not really, I've not had ugly encounters, you know, because I try to explain as much as I can. But, you know, those, and I hear very ignorant, this you would say ignorant. Okay. So anyway, because what? God is looking at himself in the mirror. That's why we are saying, even at the level all right, at the level of, because our language itself, that's why the Sufi sometimes say silence. You know, when you start saying things, all right, you're gonna, everything is limited. So anyway, he is saying that the first mirror by which he gazed at himself in contemplation reflects his most beautiful names. This that are Asma al-Husna. All right, and sublime attributes. All right, and this is the first self-revelation, self-contemplation of the ultimate reality. Refers to the first and second degrees of the absolute existence. All right, remember, at this level, it is still not manifested as individual tashahhus and ta'ayyun. Remember, but of the second of which said the ontological level of the first determination, okay, already start at the first level. It's only at the level of forms, of pairs, of opposites, comprising the active necessary divine manifestations and the passive contingent and creaturely manifestations. All right, so we'll end here. Wallahu alam. All right, continue to contemplate on it, read and contemplate. And if you have any questions, you can ask. All right, so continue. So inshallah, we'll see each other at the last this class. Yes, alhamdulillah, for this session. All right, but if we wish to continue, we can always continue, but it won't be every week. All right, because our classes have started. All right, perhaps once in 2 weeks or once a month, inshallah. That one I can discuss. All right, with the organizer, or I have to go on my own or whatever. Inshallah, we'll try to finish at least this chapter. Okay, as our intention as our objective. Wallahu alam. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. See you all.
Salam. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Doctor. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.